we go. All right, ladies, we're finishing up in the last chapter of our line-by-line study. Chapter 11, A Vision for You, page 151. For most normal folks, drinking means conviviality, companionship, and colorful imagination. It means release from care, boredom, and worry. It is joyous intimacy with friends and a feeling that life is good. But not so with us in those last days of heavy drinking. The old pleasures were gone. They were but memories. Never could we recapture the great moments of the past. There was an insistent yearning to enjoy life as we once did, and a heartbreaking obsession that some new miracle of control would enable us to do it. There was always one more attempt and one more failure. The less people tolerated us, the more we withdrew from society, from life itself, as we became subjects of King Alcohol, shivering denizens of his mad realm, the chilling vapor that is loneliness settled down. It thickened, ever becoming blacker. Some of us sought out sordid places, hoping to find understanding companionship and approval. Momentarily we did, then would come oblivion and the awful awakening to face the hideous four horsemen: terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair. Unhappy drinkers who read this page will understand. Now and then a serious drinker, being dry at the moment, says, I don't miss it at all. Feel better, work better, having a better time. As ex-problem drinkers, we smile at such a sally. We know our friend is like a boy whistling in the dark to keep up his spirits. He fools himself. Inwardly, he would give anything to take a half-dozen drinks to get away with them. He will presently try the old game again, for he isn't happy about his sobriety. He cannot picture life without alcohol. Some day he will be unable to imagine life either with alcohol or without it. Then he will know loneliness, such as few do. He will be at the jumping-off place. He will wish for the end. Well, that doesn't sound very pleasant. Great way to start off the chapter. We'll bring you down to some hopelessness. Boom, we're in the basement. But yeah, most normal folks, that when we start drinking, it was awesome. It released us from care. We had amazing times. We had great memories with friends. But as our drinking careers progressed, those moments were far and few between. We would shoot for that mark and we'd overshoot the mark every time. And, that loneliness, that despair that we would have, those sordid places and companionships we would seek out in order to fill that void inside of us that we couldn't explain, brought us to places that we talked about earlier, that incomprehensible demoralization. I never expected myself to be sitting in this type of establishment with these type of people. These aren't my friends. Well, where are my friends? Oh, well, I had excuses, right? It never was me that was the reason that they weren't around anymore. It was, she's an asshole or he's an asshole, and so I don't want to hang out with those people. Meanwhile, the asshole was me. Those four horsemen, love those guys, right? The terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair. Don't forget their cousins, guilt, shame, and remorse. Add those guys in there too. And then, we talk about that dry drunk. The one that says, I can do without alcohol, but he's miserable. Miserable, miserable, miserable. Planning and plotting in his head, coming up with excuses why he can drink, and then he takes his drink. And what I imagine in that last little line, when he says, he will be unable to imagine life either with alcohol or without, is these people that are in and out of the program. They've got a head full of AA and a belly full of booze, and they're stuck in the middle, miserable and lonely, in despair. Any hands? Dottie! Dottie!
Hi, everybody. Dottie Alcoholic, and I'm so happy to be here. It's been a while. So towards the ending of that reading, Kim, as you were describing that sad alcoholic, there's a reading, The Unhappiest Person, which includes that. And it goes kind of the same way. The unhappiest person in the world is the alcoholic who has an insistent yearning to enjoy life as he once knew it, but cannot picture life without alcohol. He has a heartbreaking obsession that by some miracle of control, he will be able to do so. Someday he will be unable to imagine life either with alcohol or without it. Then he will know loneliness as such few do. He will be at the jumping off place. He will wish for the end. And then it finishes with AA can and does show these people a solution to their problem, and its greatest recommendation, it works. And, when you were reading that, I was like, hey, that sounds awfully familiar, because like I read that every Saturday morning at my beginners meeting that I lead. So it's just, it's a good reminder that I read that every Saturday to remind me of where I was at one point in time. That loneliness, sitting home alone, drinking alone, and just wishing for the end. Not that I had the courage or the strength to do it at the end myself, but I wished it would come. And, I would pray every night that I wouldn't wake up, and I don't have to do that anymore. So thanks for that little reminder. Have a great day. Great meeting, guys.
Thanks, Dottie. Karen.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here, everyone. You keep me sober. I appreciate that. I've been watching someone in the fellowship on the Zoom meetings, and she's got about 90 days, and I need feedback. She is not a sponsee, but I've been watching her quite a bit, and she is aware that I'm part of the fellowship that she is going to every day. She has a background, as I do, in a not spiritual church. I'm trying not to state names. But at any rate, she has a religious background that very much was into God. She's having a hard time getting to that because her experience as a child was not all that great. And she's having a hard time. We keep saying, use us, use our higher power, use the fellowship. And she's having a really hard time. Can anyone give me any feedback about something else that might help?
Family, my name is Susan. I'm an alcoholic. I am that person. For 7 years, I was here before I would believe there's anything greater than me. My sponsor had some great sayings. One is, pray as if, fake it till you make it. Pray even when you don't believe. Just keep praying. Because the reality is, what I came to realize, it doesn't matter how big I am or how big I think I am. This God full of mercy and grace that's going to eventually move the obsession has to hear some kind of prayer from me. Has to hear something that's coming from my heart. So my advice to a lot of newcomers like myself was, you just pray as if, and the literature says the 3 things that are indispensable are honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. So that's where I start. You start with those 3 things. Say thank you in the morning. Thank you at night. Keep it simple. Keep it really, really simple. I can complicate the hell out of a 1-car funeral. That's what my sponsor told me. Check your brains at the fucking door. Stop thinking. It's about doing. And the next right action for me as a newcomer, when I had trouble with God, so truly for 6 years I said, "Dear Marilyn's God." That was my sponsor's name. I believed that she believed. I didn't have to believe. I just had to do the actions of belief. I had to take the next right action. And if that meant praying, and here's the truth, God, fuck you, Marilyn. I can't stand the fact that you're sober and I'm not, but I will pray to your God anyway. That's still a prayer from me to God. That's still a prayer from me to God. Take me as I am. It's a tough spot to be in. And for 7 years, I was in the rooms of AA wishing I was out having a drink, and I was out having a drink wishing I was back in AA. 7 straight years until I finally realized there was something out there that was going to help me.
Thanks, Susan. Just a reminder that we're speaking on the page that we're on. Sorry, Karen, we can have more discussion on that after. I will say, check out page 552. You can use that prayer and just rearrange it, even if we don't have faith. We do it until it comes. Marianne.
I am Marianne, alcoholic. That first page really reminded me of myself when I was at the end of my drinking, and it's that descent into loneliness and despair, and you lack the energy and the vision to figure out what's next, and you don't want to live, but you want to live long enough to drink again, and I was in that place, and I was in the middle of graduate school. I was in a job search. I needed a change in job. I was even changing careers. And I was fighting with myself every day to keep coming up with the energy to do that, because all I wanted to do was drink, and all drink did was make me depressed. And I kept and then one of my sons was going bad with addiction. And I kept thinking, I can't handle this. And yet I was going to Al-Anon trying to figure out how to fix him. And so the conflicts back and forth, it was just like I couldn't imagine life with or without alcohol. That was the truth of it. And fortunately, I hit a wall. It was called an addictions counselor who said I needed to go to AA, and I just tried. I just said yes. And my brother was with me on that trip to the addiction counselor with my son, and my brother was in the same kind of place at the same time. We didn't drink together, but we were close. And my brother drank himself to death about 3 years later. And it was, he gave up. He forgot there was still hope somewhere. And he didn't think he was needed anymore by anyone or any place. And I was in that place. And it's so stupid now that I've had the benefit of sobriety and lived quite a long time since recovery started. I see year after year where my children can still use my help and still call me for advice and all that. And when my brother died, my kids cried and cried because he was somebody they counted on so much, and he didn't appreciate it because he was too depressed and drunk all the time to even know how much people needed him. So we shortchange ourselves, and we shortchange everybody around us. And I'm so glad that's not my story anymore. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marianne. All righty. We have shown how we got out from under. You say, yes, I'm willing. But am I to be consigned to a life where I shall be stupid, boring, and glum, like some righteous people I see? I know I must get along without liquor, but how can I? Have you a sufficient substitute? Yes, there is a substitute, and it is vastly more than that. It is a fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous. There you will find release from care, boredom, and worry. Your imagination will be fired. Life will mean something at last. The most satisfactory years of your existence lie ahead. Thus we find the fellowship, and so will you. How is that to come about, you ask? Where am I to find these people? You are going to meet these new friends in your own community. Near you, alcoholics are dying helplessly like people in a sinking ship. If you live in a large place, there are hundreds. High and low, rich and poor, these are future fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous. Among them, you will make lifelong friends. You will be bound to them with new and wonderful ties, for you will escape disaster together, and you will commence, shoulder to shoulder, your common journey. Then you will know what it means to give of yourself that others may survive and rediscover life. You will learn the full meaning of love thy neighbor as thyself. I get choked up reading that. I love those paragraphs. I love this chapter. And a lot of people get confused between the fellowship and the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And this right here describes the fellowship perfectly. We are people who walk shoulder to shoulder on a common journey. We are here as people who have recovered to carry this message to those who have not. The fellowship does not keep us sober. The fellowship is where we come to find those who have found this common solution in order to put it into play in our lives too. And from that grow friendships, lifelong friendships, deep, meaningful friendships that we did never experience before. We are not stupid, boring, nor glum. Those who are tend not to be recovered. So go near people who feel like sunshine. Go near people who've got this light and this fire. Go near people who want to help you. Those are people who have what this book is describing. And I'm telling you, your life will change and you will see this grow up. You will be fired up. They use this fire in this book. Like, that's where we get the term fired. I'm on fire for my recovery. And you know, this is what we do here. We have a fellowship in order to find those who need what we have, and we give it away freely. Lucille.
I'm Lucille. I'm an alcoholic. The other night I heard that there was 153 promises in the book, and I have written beside one line here that it's a promise. The promise that I will find release from care, boredom, and worry. I just wanted to point that out.
Absolutely. There's a couple more in there too. Your imagination will be fired. Life will mean something at last. And then you get another one. You will make lifelong friends. There's a whole whack of goodness in these couple of paragraphs. Absolutely. Joan, we're on page 152, love. Brooke, go ahead. You're unmuted.
There I am. Thanks, Anne. Hi, I'm Brooke and I'm an alcoholic and 42 days sober today. So don't count those days. Thank you. Yeah, I really like this passage because it made me think of something that actually happened to me this morning that, you know, I'm a manager at Fraser Health. So I've got not a huge department, just 7 of them. But I took over as manager a couple months ago, or a couple years ago, I should say. And it was a really stressful thing for me as I was, you know, as an active alcoholic and a people pleaser. And I saw relationships, especially like that, where I'm like in charge or somehow, you know, I have to be of service to them. And that would terrify me because the way I saw service and relationship was like, what can I do to make you as happy as possible? Right? So how can I read your mind and, you know, anticipate things for you and lead you towards the right decisions, but also never tell you no and never make you unhappy. And, you know, you can imagine how fun that is, even with a department of 7. They're all different, right? And I had one of my librarians reach out to me yesterday, and she's struggling with a really serious mental health issue. And, you know, she's... It makes about half of my staff now that I know have like a serious issue. And, you know, before that would have just sent me over the edge. I've been like, okay, this is clearly not the department for me. I'm going to get burnt out, which I did last fall. But when it happened this morning, I sent her back an email from my heart just saying, you know, that I was there for her. And I felt really good. You know, when I got the response back from her saying, thank you so much. I think I'm going to take, you know, Monday's mental health day. Instead of feeling stressed and like anticipating anxious future worries, I felt really good. I thought, good. I'm being of service to my department, and it just felt calm and good. And that's definitely completely due to all the relationships I've built in the fellowship over the past few months. I got one girlfriend in particular who's just a couple weeks ahead of me with her sobriety, and we talk all the time, and we're kind of different types of messes, but that's been really awesome. And I've connected with a lot of people in the program who, they know what they're doing, and they do have that light. And boy, it's just so encouraging to realize like that motivation and tendency towards helping and being that, people pleaser, it does still have a purpose in my life, and it's a positive thing rather than something that would keep me home and drunk because I was so anxious about any kind of social interaction because I put myself in these weird positions where I would never speak up for my own needs. And one other thing I want to say about this that made me laugh at the very beginning when you were saying, reading the part, I know I must get along without liquor, but how can I have you a sufficient substitute? And I laughed in my head because I thought, oh yeah, that was for my first 2 months in AA. Oh, and here's my daughter right on time. Say hi, Lily. I did try to find a sufficient substitute that was not in the program, right? Like marijuana, mushrooms, sex, relationships, right? I had all sorts of substitutes lined up, and that didn't help with my sobriety or my relapses. So, yeah, that was just a little chuckle I had to myself, like, yeah, I tried that, so it sort of speaks to the trying to do the program in your own way, right? But yeah, thanks for letting me share. Say hi, Arya.
Yeah, absolutely. We find lots of great substitutes. The gym, food, shopping, gambling, sex, you name it. We can try to find other solutions. But yeah, there's the substitute is here. It's in the book. And I love where it says rediscover life. Like you said, we're not just here to be of service to other alcoholics. The sunlight of our spirit can shine on anyone. You never know what someone is struggling with. There is so many people struggling with so many things, and we can still be a light to them and give them hope as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be to those finding their way out of addiction or alcoholism. Lisa G.
Good morning, everybody. I've missed you. Still alcoholic, still Lise. And I just want to speak to 2 sentences here on page 152, which say, life will mean something at last. The most satisfactory years of your existence lie ahead. I believe that. Have a good rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Lise. Terry S.
Hi, Kim. Hi, everybody. I'm Terry. I'm an alcoholic. Just very quickly, too. And actually, it's funny. The thing that popped out the most to me was what Lisa just also shared. The most satisfactory years of your existence lie ahead. I love also that we read A Vision for You at the end of 164. I don't know any other group that does that. And it's so inspiring every single time I go to a meeting. And this is, part of this is read. But this is the reason I keep coming, is because I have 94 days today. So I'm also counting days. I'm still feeling through the dark here, you guys. Like, I keep showing up because you guys are so bright, and I want what you have. And this summarizes it right here. So I can't see it for myself yet, but I'm going to keep coming because I just love it. And I love you guys. And Kim, when you read, like, it makes me smile inside. Like, I'll never forget when we were like back on the part with 2 employers. Like, whenever I read this now, I'm going to hear you in my head. Look here, Ed, do you want to stop drinking or not? And that just makes me smile inside. So I love hearing you read this, and I love going over this with all of you. Thank you.
Other people love it when I do Dr. William D. Silkworth, and then I'm like, Jumanji. I entertained myself. Sorry. Marianne in Toronto.
We're definitely not a glum lot.
No, not at all. Someone else is like, I want you to read me bedtime stories. I'm like, that's so weird. I don't get it. I hate my voice. Marianne in Toronto. Is it hot today?
It is.
I bet.
Hi, friends. I am an alcoholic from Toronto. My name's Marianne. Grateful to be here. Grateful to be over. It just blows my mind. And what gives me shivers is that they're speaking to me today, 80 years later, and what my life is like now after doing this. Like, it just blows my mind how they knew me so well, how they've helped me so well, and that they know what my life is now. I mean, it is truly amazing. Thanks.
Thank you. And the next Marianne. I think we have 3 Mariannes today. That's awesome.
I know. Each time you said Marianne, I thought it was me. Then I looked down and I go, oh, it's that lady, and then it's that lady. But anyhow, I'm so glad to be here today. And I'm glad the other 2 Mariannes are here. Welcome. So this is the first time at this meeting. I love it. My imagination will be fired. You know, my imagination gets fired every time I go into the rooms, whether it's trying to help somebody else, trying to help myself, trying to learn something new, or tell somebody else something new, or just listening to their pain, the people that I'm working with. And you know, I do get a lot of satisfaction out of it. And sometimes, like, I'm starting a new project where I'm doing like what Kimberly is doing, is leading the meeting. And there's so many, it was my first day today. And like, I thought I was going to lose my mind, but I didn't. It's still here. But it was so much, like, I felt excited doing it and learning it. And I know I don't have everything down. I have notes all over the place, but that's okay. I can collect them, you know, for next week. And then all of a sudden, I couldn't even get back on my computer after everything was done. So I figured, oh, God. So finally, I called up for another help from my brother who's not in the room. So I can get outside help from other people, which thank God that I can. And so I was able to get back on. And then he goes, okay, that's it. Now you got to do the rest. So I did the rest. And I thank God I got on to this. I have no idea how I got on here, but I am so thankful that I did. And so that, you know, the satisfaction that exists for me, even ahead, like till next week when I do my other meeting, it's like so exciting. Like, I can't wait until I can wait, but I'll have to wait until I do it, because I don't know if I'll be helping somebody else. Hopefully, I think I might be, but the fellowship, by just participating in the fellowship and learning something new, it's like really exciting for me, because like I never chaired before. I've always, I mean, on Zoom, I've chaired at regular meetings, but not on a Zoom meeting, which is completely different than chairing at a regular meeting for me anyway. So it's another process of learning something new, which is on the computer, and you know, just trying to figure out like what to do. But I had so many people helping me today. Before and then afterwards. And there was this young girl, really young compared to me. And she knows the computer, like, she's like a whiz. So at the end, she was helping me. And she was helping me at the beginning also. And she helps so many people on with the computer, and just so many people in life. And she has always, like, she's like Kimberly, very outgoing and smiling. And so it's like an attraction, like I want to draw her in towards me. And she has a lot less time than me, but I still want to have that attraction to me. So that's what in my imagination was getting fired up by her and by people in these rooms, just from listening to you guys. So thanks for letting me share.
Thanks so much, Marianne. All right. Carrying on. We're on page 153 in case anyone's joined us late. It may seem incredible that these men are to become happy, respected, and useful once more. How can they rise out of such misery, bad repute, and hopelessness? The practical answer is that since these things have happened amongst us, they can happen with you. Should you wish them above all else and be willing to make use of our experience, we are sure they will come. The age of miracles is still with us. Our own recovery proves that. Our hope is that when this chip of a book is launched on the world tide of alcoholism, defeated drinkers will seize upon it to follow its suggestions. Many, we are sure, will rise to their feet and march on. They will approach still other sick ones, and fellowships of Alcoholics Anonymous may spring up in each city and hamlet. havens for those who must find a way out. In the chapter Working with Others, you gathered an idea of how we approach and aid others to health. Suppose now that through you, several families have adopted this way of life. You will want to know more of how to proceed from that point. Perhaps the best way of treating you to a glimpse of your future will be to describe the growth of the fellowship among us. Here is a brief account. Years ago, in 1935, one of our number made a journey to a certain western city. From a business standpoint, his trip came off badly. Had he been successful in his enterprise, he would have been set on his feet financially, which at the time seemed vitally important. But his venture wound up in a lawsuit and bogged down completely. The proceedings was shot through with much hard feeling and controversy. Bitterly discouraged, he found himself in a strange place, discredited and almost broke. Still physically weak and sober but few months, he saw that his predicament was dangerous. He wanted so much to talk with someone, but whom? One dismal afternoon, he paced a hotel lobby, wondering how his bill was to be paid. At one end of the room stood a glass-covered directory of local churches. Down the lobby, a door opened into an attractive bar. He could see the gay crowd inside. In there, he would find companionship and release. Unless he took some drinks, he might not have the courage to scrape up an old acquaintance and would have a lonely weekend. Of course he couldn't drink, but why not sit hopefully at a table, a bottle of ginger ale before him? After all, had he not been sober 6 months now? Perhaps he could handle, say, 3 drinks? No more. Fear gripped him. He was on thin ice. Again, it was that old insidious insanity, that first drink. With a shiver, he turned away and walked down to the lobby to the church directory. Music and gay chatter still floated to him from the bar. But what about his responsibilities, his family, and the men who would die because they would not know how to get well? Ah, yes, those other alcoholics. There must be many such in this town. He would phone a clergyman. His sanity returned, and he thanked God. Selecting a church at random from the directory, he stepped into a booth and lifted the receiver. His call to the clergyman led him presently to a certain resident of the town who, though formerly able and respected, was then nearing the nadir of alcoholic despair. It was the usual situation: home in jeopardy, wife ill, children distracted, bills in arrears, and standing damaged. He had a desperate desire to stop, but saw no way out, for he had earnestly tried many avenues of escape. Painfully aware of being somehow abnormal, the man did not fully realize what it meant to be alcoholic. When our friend related his experience, the man agreed that no amount of willpower he might muster could stop his drinking for long. A spiritual experience, he conceded, was absolutely necessary, but the price seemed high upon the basis suggested. He told how he lived in constant worry about those who might find out about his alcoholism. He had, of course, the familiar alcoholic obsession that few knew of his drinking. Why, he argued, would he lose the remainder of his business, only to bring still more suffering to his family by foolishly admitting his plight to people whom he had made his livelihood? He would do anything, he said, but that. Being intrigued, however, he invited our friend to his home. Some time later, just as he thought he was getting control of his liquor situation, he went on a roaring bender. For him, this was the spree that ended all sprees. He saw that he would have to face his problems squarely, that God might give him mastery. One morning he took the bull by the horns and set out to tell those he feared what his trouble had been. He found himself surprisingly well received and learned that many knew of his drinking. Stepping into his car, he made the rounds of people he had hurt. He trembled as he went about, for this might mean ruin, particular to a person in this line of business. At midnight he came home exhausted, but very happy. He has not had a drink since. As we shall see, he now means a great deal to his community. And the major liabilities of 30 years of hard drinking have been repaired in 4. So a lot of you are going to remember most of that story from the beginning of our book, as that's Bill's story. And then we've transitioned to Dr. Bob's story. You can read more of Dr. Bob's story in the back in the stories Dr. Bob's Nightmare. And if you want to get more into it, there's more books that you can read after the book study. But that's just a bit more of the history there of the story between Bob and Bill and the founding of our fellowship. That was the beginnings of Alcoholics Anonymous. But, we go back to page 153 there when it's talking about, that is the hope of this book. To be launched into the world of alcoholism, to find these problem drinkers so that they may find us and our solution. And that is what Bill did when he came to Bob, and that's what he continued to do. That's why they wrote this book. Lisa G.
Yep, definitely. Oh, yep. Page 154. We're still in 2020 as of this teaching today, and I'm reminded of that old insidious first drink. Again, it was the old insidious insanity, that first drink that took a good friend of ours on the North Shore earlier this year, and he was just speaking to a 30-day chip that he had worked so hard for, and the following week he had gone on that thin ice alluded to on page 156 or 157 that our chair read this morning. And he was on thin ice, all right. He drove drunk to go see his daughter in his best thinking after 30 days to go visit his daughter, and he didn't make it. And on my very best day in Winnipeg in the 80s, I drove on ice with drink in hand and joint in the other, and drinking system and joint while I was driving. And man, oh man, I don't know how I made it out alive, but I do know it's by seconds and inches. And I don't know about you ladies, but this Vision for You several pages really resonates with me. And I'm looking forward to hearing what some of you have to say, but it's with that first drink that I'm just grateful that I lived to speak today, because I changed my dry date 6 times, and this is the first time I'm almost 17 years since I'm here.
Thanks, Lise. Marianne Toronto.
Hi. So it says, it talks about his old insidious insanity, and he's 6 months sober. So insane thoughts still come in sobriety, but then he gets restored. As soon as he's thought of helping others, his insanity leaves in those 2 paragraphs. I find myself in kind of crazy thinking a lot of times, but if I pick up the phone and maybe talk to somebody who's got a like mind, it helps. It gets me out of myself. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Always, and it says it many times in our book, when all else fails, working with another alcoholic will save the day. It's repeated. And if they say it a few times, might be a good idea to try it. Just a suggestion. I love how they say it's just a suggestion. No, these are clear-cut directions. If you want what we got, follow them. It works. Anybody else? All right, let's see what happens. More of Dr. Bob. But life was not easy for the 2 friends. Plenty of difficulties presented themselves. Both saw that they must keep spiritually active. One day they called up the head nurse of a local hospital. They explained their need and inquired if she had a first-class alcoholic prospect. She replied, "Yes, we've got a corker. He's just beaten up a couple nurses. Goes off his head completely when he's drinking, but he's a grand chap when he's sober, though he's been here 8 times in the last 6 months. Understand, he was once a well-known lawyer in town, but just now we've got 'em strapped down tight." Here was a prospect, all right, but by the description, none too promising. The use of spiritual principles in such cases was not so well understood as it is now. But one of the friends said, "Put him in a private room. We'll be down." 2 days later, a future fellow of Alcoholics Anonymous stared glassily at the strangers beside his bed. "Who are you fellows, and why this private room? I was always in a ward before," said one of the visitors. "We're giving you a new treatment for alcoholism." Hopelessness was written large on the man's face as he replied, "Oh, but that's no use. Nothing would fix me. I'm a goner. The last 3 times I got drunk on the way home from here. I'm afraid to go out the door. I can't understand it." For an hour, the 2 friends told them about their drinking experiences. Over and over, he would say, that's me, I drink like that." The man in the bed was told of the acute poisoning from which he suffered, how it deteriorates the body of an alcoholic and warps his mind. There was much talk about the mental state preceding the first drink. "Yes, that's me," said the sick man, "the very image. You fellows know your stuff all right, but I don't see what good it'll do. You fellows are somebody. I was once, but I'm a nobody now. From what you tell me, I know more than ever. I can't stop." At this, both the visitors burst into a laugh. Said the future fellow anonymous, "Damn little to laugh about that I can see." The 2 friends spoke of their spiritual experience and told him about the course of action they carried out. He interrupted, "I used to be strong for the church, but that won't fix it. I've prayed to God on hangover mornings, and I've sworn that I'd never touch another drop, but by 9 o'clock I'd be boiled as an owl." Next day found the prospect more receptive. He had been thinking it over. "Maybe you're right," he said. "God ought to be able to do anything." Then he added, "He sure didn't do much for me when I was trying to fight this booze racket alone." On the 3rd day, the lawyer gave his life to the care and direction of his Creator, and said he was perfectly willing to do anything necessary. His wife came, scarcely daring to be hopeful, though she thought she had saw something different about her husband already. He had begun to have a spiritual experience. That afternoon he put on his clothes and walked from the hospital a free man. He entered a political campaign, making speeches, frequenting men's gatherings of all sorts, often staying up all night. He had lost the race by only a narrow margin, but he had found God, and in finding God had found himself. That was in June 1935. He never drank again. He too has become a respected and useful member of his community. He has helped other men recover and is a power in the church from which he was long absent. Again, here is another story from the beginning of the book that's told in more detail, and it hits me, right? You can hear how they're sharing their experience, strength, and hope. You can see how they're bringing him to that point of hopelessness and relating their experience so he can go, yeah, that's me. I drink like that. But like I've said previous in other sessions, you have to make it so that they can relate that you were once like them, because people see me and they're like, I'm not like you. You're confident. You're outgoing. You're this Kimberly girl. I wasn't always this girl. I have to keep that girl close. The old Kimberly has to stay close, because otherwise I can't rightly relate my experience. But this is a very great example of them gaining the confidence of the other alcoholic in a few hours. And you can see the progression over 3 days where he's detoxed. The brain fog has lifted and he's become more open-minded. Just because day 1 they're shut off doesn't mean we don't call upon them day 2 and day 3. They become more willing as the fog leaves, and we stay there carrying our hope to them. Just amazing. I love this chapter. It brings me to tears every time I read it. Never fails. Aloha, Lisa.
Hey, aloha. I'm Lisa. I'm an alcoholic. And something that I heard the other day that was written about, actually, Bill had written about it in the grapevines, some of the grapevines in Language of the Heart, that when they asked, I guess it was Sister Mary Ignatius, when they asked her, do you have an alcoholic? They said, yeah, we got a corker in there. So, but in those days, they put them in a room with multiple other beds. But when they were about to die, a lot of alcoholics, they put them in a private room. So when they moved him into the private room, that was separating him from the other people that were in the dorm kind of hospital room. And then he knew it was really serious. So that gift of desperation, and Bill had written how that they knew that would make him understand, you're dying. So something about to that effect. So there was the gift of desperation, along with these men telling exactly how they drank, which also initiated him to understand they know exactly what I'm talking about. It's just miraculous how that all fits together. And yeah, every day coming in and giving a little piece of it and having him understand, he was clearing, his head was clearing. So then they gave it to him straight. And this was the first time he actually felt that there was something else, that these guys knew what they were talking about. And look at them, they could walk in and out of that hospital. So it all kind of meshed together. What a beautiful thing. I love this chapter too, Kimberly. Anyway, thanks for letting me share.
Thanks, Lisa. My little marketing brain just kind of got a twing, because you know what that also did to everybody else still in that ward? It scared the shit out of the people still in the ward, because normally the people would leave the ward and they'd come back drunk. Or if they'd leave the ward and never come back, they were dead. So these people were seeing guys leave the ward. They were recovering and not coming back. So the guys in the ward are like, oh God, I don't want to have to leave, because they knew what it meant. So it's like kind of like almost like that weird reverse psychology on the people still in the ward too, because then they're like, oh God, it's my turn. They're taking me. I'm going to die. And then they don't know that they're getting better. Oh, sorry, my brain just went there. It was kind of funny trip. Susan. Oh, do it again. We were playing. There we go.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. I wanted to just talk about something on page 157. The second paragraph from the end, he says, you fellows are somebody. I was once, but I'm a nobody now. One of the things that I did when I first came in was I constantly compared myself. You know, unfortunately for me, it was the opposite. I mean, I actually got sober up at the Wilson House in Vermont, but I lived in a small town. I had a lawyer. My husband was a lawyer. I had a restaurant. I had a lot of money. So I'm thinking I'm so much better than everybody. Yeah. Because for me, that was the measure of everyone's worth. You know, how much money you had, what was your position in life, what you dress, what you look like. It was when I really started, when God allowed me to hear those words, how people were similar to me, that we were drinking over this, not the same exact things, but drank for the same reasons, to change how we felt. That inside we were all the same. That's when it was easy for me to stop comparing myself. My sponsor always said to me, if I walk into a meeting and compare myself with anybody, I'm going to fall short. But if I compare myself from where I am when I walked in that first door, I'm doing okay today. And that's important for me. She also told me, start dressing a little nicer, stop swearing, and clean up my act so I could people would find me, that I had changed in those ways were attractive, but never to flaunt that, to always know those were gifts from God. And cleaning up my act was simply part of just cleaning up my act, not to show that I was better than anybody. So I know today, even after several 24 hours, that comparison is really tough for me. It's when I'm not spiritually fit. You know, that I get dressed for a meeting and think, oh, gee, John will be there today. And boy, I want to look good for him. You know, that's sick stuff. But it's real important for me to know that this is between me and God, not between me and you. but it's between me and God, and me and myself. Thank you.
And now look at us all in our homes in our pajamas showing up at meetings. Like, oh yeah, I get that dressing up for a meeting thing, absolutely. But I had a similar experience. Like my first rooms were in East Vancouver, and I was from the suburbs, and I didn't identify, and it ended up keeping me in this different fellowshipy sobriety. And now I'm back at that original room where I thought I wasn't like those people, and that's where I found the solution. And God, I wish I would have stayed those 2 years earlier. Man, but it was meant to be my journey. Alrighty, let's continue. Where are we? So you see, there were 3 alcoholics in that town who now felt they had to give to others what they had found or be sunk. After several failures to find others, a 4th turned up. He came through an acquaintance who had heard the good news. He proved to be a devil-may-care young fellow whose parents could not make out whether he wanted to stop drinking or not. They were deeply religious people, much shocked by their son's refusal to have anything to do with the church. He suffered horribly from his sprees, but it seemed as if nothing could be done for him. He consented, however, to go to the hospital, where he occupied the very room recently vacated by the lawyer. He had 3 visitors. After a bit, he said, "The way you fellows put this spiritual stuff makes sense. I'm ready to do business. I guess the old folks were right after all." So one more alcoholic was added to the fellowship. All this time, our friend of the hotel lobby incident remained in that town. He was there 3 months. He now returned home, leaving behind his first acquaintance, the lawyer, and the devil-may-care chap. These men had found something brand new in life. Though they knew they must help other alcoholics if they would remain sober, that motive became secondary. It was transcended by the happiness they found in giving themselves for others. They shared their homes, their slender resources, and gladly devoted their spare hours to fellow sufferers. They were willing, by day or night, to place a new man in the hospital and visit him afterward. They grew in numbers. They experienced a few distressing failures, but in those cases they made an effort to bring the man's family into a spiritual way of living, thus relieving much worry and suffering. A year and 6 months later, these 3 had succeeded with 7 more. Seeing much of each other, scarce an evening passed that someone's home did not shelter a little gathering of men and women, happy in their release and constantly thinking how they might present their discovery to some newcomer. In addition to these casual get-togethers, it became customary to set apart 1 night a week for a meeting to be attended by anyone or everyone interested in a spiritual way of life. Aside from fellowship and sociability, the prime object was to provide a time and place where new people might bring their problems. Oh, I like it. I love that little description there. So again, this young devil-may-care chap, he's from the previous chapters too. He was the young man who had been in a religious school and had an overbearing amount of religion dumped on him, and he rebelled, and he was suicidal and was wrought with business failures. That's the same chap. So he was AA number 4. And as it says here, he too recovered and he joined the masses. And then I love how they describe that. They're kind of describing in that last paragraph closed meetings where alcoholics get together to go over the solution and to study what they're doing and to pass on how well they're doing or where they're lacking. But then they also talk about those casual get-togethers, which what we now would call an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, where newcomers can find us and discuss their problems, not where we go to discuss our problems. We are to discuss our problems in those closed meetings or with our spiritual advisor or sponsor. These open meetings should be discussed, the problems for the newcomers, to find our solution, not where we go and dump and unload our stuff. I love that they make a very clear distinction there. because people haven't remembered that. 85 years later, people go to meetings of open meetings and they dump their problems. That's not attractive to the newcomer. I don't want to hear about your dead cat, your shitty employer, your cheating spouse. That's a country song. That is not a share of experience, strength, and hope at an open meeting. We're meant to share how it was, what happened, and what it's like now. So the newcomer sits there and goes, I want that. That's me. Not sitting there going, oh, this sounds fucking dreadful. Where's the bar? Because that's what those are. It's a country song. Wrong room. No hands up? Marianne, I see your thumbs up, now your hands up.
I don't know how you can follow up on that. But I know that top paragraph on page 160 is highlighted, and it says why we have meetings. And so I keep reading that because it is so important to, it's just experience, strength, and hope. What it was like, what happened, what it's like now. But I got to tell you, and what leapt at me, and I didn't last time, but the one paragraph, but he had found God, and in finding God had found himself. I have found that to be true. And you know, I have to keep rereading that because I fight myself a lot of times, but it's just getting to know myself and that I'm on the right road and I'm doing the right stuff. Because I was one who was in the hospital 8 times in 6 months, and I was under 4 points restraint, and I was formed 1 many times. And I have come through that with another solution. So I'm so grateful to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Alrighty, let's see, is this our iPhone?
Hi, it's Trish.
Hi, Trish.
I'm an alcoholic.
I didn't recognize
God,
you without your bridge in the background.
Oh, God, I don't know how it got off, but it's gone. I'm so grateful to be here today, Kim, and that was so funny. I'm cracking up. The country song. I used to listen to country music, and it was so depressing, and it just, wow. But it's so good to hear it like that, and when you go to a meeting that is open, and it's coming up to 2 years for me, it's too hard and sad to listen to really sad stories, and it's better for the newcomer to do exactly what you say, to be the one to dump. And I'm just grateful to have learned that today. Also, the spiritual part of this is really interesting because I thought being spiritual was just a new thing in life. In the 19th century, because I've always been spiritual and a little bit religious, but it looks like it was back there 100 years ago to be spiritual and not religious. It's just an honor to be here. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much, Trish. Yeah, Bill Dubb, he was making it cool to be spiritual way before it was cool to be spiritual. And yeah, you know, one of the things where we need the newcomer to be the one that dumps at the meeting is because that's how we know who they need to be connected to, right? If I hear someone dump their story and I'm like, so-and-so is going to be the best person to help that person, or we know how to approach them and relate our experience to them so that we can listen to the newcomer's share. And then our share is going to touch on our parts of our story that reflects on that, you know, and that comes with being a good chairperson too, or a good lead of the meeting, is if you hear a newcomer sharing, you've been listening to every other home group member or somebody's story so that the next person you pick is hopefully going to share bang on to that story to bring them up to hope. Because the pattern in our book is we bring them to hopelessness, then we give them to hope. We bring them to hopelessness and we give them hope. Because hope's not going to do nothing for you if you're not hopeless. So we always want to make sure, and it sounds like, oh yeah, you're doomed. Man, that sucks. That sucks, man. And they're like, yeah, I know. It's awful. And you're like, I had that happen too. And they're like, really? And there you go, right? You've already started to change that. So, that's something to keep in mind if you're chairing a meeting or leading a meeting. Listen for those cues in people's shares and then pull on someone next that is going to come up. And if you start one newcomer after another newcomer after another your meeting's going woo, boom, and you're going to crash and burn, and the meeting all of a sudden is like, whoa, I got to change this channel. I hit the country channel and it's bad news. And that just sets the tone. So when you're chairing, you can easily set the tone based on who you pick to share. And it's like this weird art that you get good at. Kelowna, laying on the beach over there.
Yeah, well, we're locked down. We can't lay on the beach, but we can go straight to the water. So that's what I'm doing. But what you're saying, and a lot that you say, Kimberly, a whole lot is definitely inspiring for me, because as you're saying went back to the beginning of the book, and now here it is. I never realized that before, and today I'm really tuned in, and even more so because I started a big book study with other women in the Women's International. There was 33 women there yesterday, and I'm still bringing them through. We're getting ready to start on the doctor's opinion, but what inspires me now from just listening to this is once we get the face-to-face meetings again, whenever that would be, I can start another meeting like that, what you just described. Because meanwhile, when I was listening to you, I was thinking, how am I supposed to change our meeting? We're an open meeting I can't change that meeting, and even if I suggested it, but I can start another meeting. And oh boy, I'm just so fired up with this, because in the first recordings we did, you can hear me say, I'm just learning this book because I need to learn how to be a sponsor, and I want to learn and now I'm like, yeah, I got it so fast. And what's so valuable are the recordings. Now I can go back, because I need to hear stuff over and over again. So that's all I got. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And every time you listen, I get this, my Oprah got in my little Oprah advice, and Oprah said, she goes, every time you experience something, it's the same information, but you're going to take away different things that are relevant to where you are now. So that's why when we read the big book, every time I read it, and I've read it probably 100 times, I get something new from it, because I'm in a different place. And that's a mark of a good book. Every time you read it, you learn something new, and that changes the message. That's a good book. That's a textbook. The Bible does that. The big book does that. It's amazing. It's so good. Like my book, it's fallen apart. I really don't want to start a new one, but, and that's the ripple effect we can have is, we can start a new meeting. I've heard so many people from these things saying, I'm gonna start my own meeting. You can do it before we even open by starting your own study and inviting people. If you build it, they will come. You just have to persevere, and even if it's only one person, don't be discouraged, because this started with me helping one person way back a long time ago, and it was just because our schedules didn't jive with all the other mom groups because our kids played sports. So we met Tuesday mornings in my living room, and then some other ladies that were moms came, and then look, I just kept reading and reading and reading, and now I have this, and you have it, and you pass it on. That's how it works, and it's so cool, the ripple effect. I'll tell you a quick story before I go to Susan. I got my solution based from a meeting in Vancouver that I have to drive to. So I was like, I'm going to bring this to my neighborhood. So I found a home group, and they only had 4 members. And I'm a mathematician girl. I'm like, if the home group only has 4 members and we have to get a group conscience, then I just have to bring my 4 sponsees, and we've got a vote of 5. And we can change shit. Little bit of a defect there, just a smidge. Susan, gotta unmute, love.
I'm just going to say that my sponsor told me early on that the big book was the Bible written in drunk,
Yes.
which I think is great.
Absolutely. And you can get, there's the big book, the Recovery Bible big book, where it shows the thing, and then Joe's taking it to another level, and he's got an actual Bible and a big book, and he cross-references. I just copy his notes. I don't got time for that. But yeah, no, it's awesome. It's almost like the Coles Notes version of the Bible for us.
Yeah, except better.
Except way better. All right. Okie dokie. Let's open her up and we will say the Serenity Prayer. Let me get my buttons. Oh, I got to stop the recording. We're going to finish this next week on Monday. I'm so excited. Okay.